start live streaming on YouTube.
Okay. Anne, are you swearing us in?
Okay. So it is 7 o'clock. We have all new appointments for the Planning and Zoning Commission. I want to start by saying welcome and congratulations to your appointments to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The city appreciates your involvement in local government. A reminder that when I ask you to state your name, please state your name one at a time in alphabetical order by last name. Now, if all of you could raise your right hand and repeat, unmute yourself and make sure your video is shown. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name.
Douglas Donaldson.
Ian McLeod.
Muhammad Momin.
I, Nick Pilch.
I, Elizabeth Waddy.
Do solemnly affirm.
Solemnly affirm.
Do
Solemnly
solemnly
affirm.
solemnly
Do
affirm
solemnly affirm
That I will support and defend.
that I would
That I
support
will support and defend
The Constitution of the United States.
the
the
Constitution
Constitution of the
United
United
States
States
And the Constitution of the State of California.
and the
and the
Constitution
Constitution of the State of California
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all
enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
that I will
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
To the Constitution of the United States.
to the
to the Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution of the State of California.
and the
and to the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
that
That I take this obligation freely
Without any mental reservation.
without any
mental reservation
Or purpose of evasion.
or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
and that I
That I will well and faithfully discharge
The duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
And if you could keep your hand up for a sec. Doug Donaldson, do you attest to the oath that you just took?
Yes. Mhm.
Ian McLeod, do you attest to the oath that you just took?
Yes.
Muhammad Momin, do you attest to the oath that you just took?
Yes.
Nick Pilch, do you attest to the oath that you just took?
Yes.
And Elizabeth Waddy, do you attest to the oath that you just took?
Yes.
Thank you, and you may lower your hands now. Please go ahead and sign the oath and send the original back to me. Instructions in the email. And congratulations, Planning and Zoning Commissioner. Thank you for your volunteer effort. And now I will turn the meeting back to the commission and the chair. Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, and congratulations to all my fellow commissioners. With that, we will go ahead and call this regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of January 13th, 2021 to order. With that, we will agenda item number 1, roll call, or item 2, roll call. I'm sorry.
Yes. Commissioner Donaldson? Commissioner McLeod?
Here.
Commissioner Moman?
Here.
Commissioner Pilch?
Present.
Chair Waddy?
Here. Thank you. That will move us on to item 3 on our agenda, which is ex parte communications. Do any commissioners have any ex parte communications to disclose this evening?
No.
Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine and will be enacted on by one motion. By approval of the consent calendar, staff recommendations will be adopted unless otherwise modified by the commission. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a member of the commission or a member of the audience requests removal of the items from the consent calendar. We have 2 items this evening. First up, item 4-1, the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes from December 9th. In item 4-2, planning application 20-066, a request to vacate an easement at 1198 Curtis, which is a recommendation to table the matter until a further date. On those 2 items on the consent, do we have a motion or any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we should go ahead and open it up. Are there any, Chris, are there any members of public comment who wish to remove any of these items from the consent calendar?
I am seeing no hands raised to pull any items.
Okay. With that, then we will go ahead and close public comment on the consent calendar. And with that is, do we have a motion on the consent calendar?
Move approval of the consent calendar?
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner McLeod, then on that vote, and for the new folks, I'm just sort of going around in the circle here. So Commissioner Moman,
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch,
I'll abstain because I wasn't at the meeting for the minutes.
Commissioner McLeod,
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson,
Mhm.
and I vote yes as well. So I would imagine we'll have an abstention from 2 of our new commissioners then on the meeting minutes, and otherwise full approval 5-0 on item 4-2. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to item 5 on our agenda, which is general public comment. This is public comment for folks who are wishing to address the commission on matters that are not otherwise agendized on this evening's calendar. Each member of the public will have up to 3 minutes to address the commission. Chris, do we have any members of the public who are wishing to speak during general public comment? The time is now to raise your hand.
I see one person, Jesse Regent. You have 3 minutes to speak starting now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Perhaps this is out of order since you just tabled this, but this is for the agenda item regarding the vacating of the easement. Is this proper to talk about this now or ask a question about it now, or does it go to the next meeting?
That item was tabled, so there'll be no further discussion on that item this evening. So I would recommend, and Anne, correct me if this was wrong, but I would recommend reaching out to planning staff if you have any follow-up questions. The commission will hear it at a later date.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, are there any other members of the public who are wishing to speak during public comment?
I see no other hands at this time.
Okay. Then with that, we will go ahead and close public comment, and we will move on then to item 6 on our agenda, which is discussion and possible action of regularly agendized items. We have one item 6-1. This is planning application 20-065, design review and conditional use for a 2-story addition at 1106 Neilson Street. We'll go ahead and turn it over to staff for a presentation now.
Chris, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
Okay. Once again, this is planning application 20065, design review and conditional use permit for a second story addition. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 3,750 square foot lot with a 3-bedroom, 1.5, 1,460 square foot house built in 1927. City records show that in 2013, a building permit was issued for foundation replacement, front porch rebuild, and a kitchen and bathroom remodel. In 2014, a building permit was issued for a water line replacement, a new half bath in the basement area, and a new electrical sub panel. Here's a street view of the property as it sits today. And project requests. The applicant is seeking design review approval for an addition to the home and a conditional use permit to extend an existing non-conforming wall to accommodate the proposed addition. The project scope includes 760 square feet of a 760 square foot second story addition, which would accommodate a new master suite, office, bathroom, and 1 additional bedroom. In total, the project scope would result in a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom, 1,914 square foot home with a maximum height of 27 feet and 7 inches. Here's an existing elevation of the home. And here's the proposed elevation with the second story addition on top. Exceptional design. Projects which exceed a 0.45 FAR are subject to an exceptional design as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Exceptional design and treatments include a new balcony at the rear of the home, matching roof forms and fascia trim boards, decorative brackets under the roof eaves, photovoltaics on top of the proposed second story addition, and the retention of pre-existing architectural features such as the existing front porch, the existing bay window, and chimney. Conditional use permit. The applicant is seeking a conditional use permit approval from the commission to extend an existing non-conforming wall. At its closest point, the existing north wall is located 3.3 feet, where 3.75 feet is required. Per section 2024-020 of the Albany Municipal Code, a conditional use permit is required for both vertical and horizontal extensions of non-conforming walls. The required findings for the conditional use permit were included as attachment 2 of the staff report. And this exhibit is just the site survey indicating the non-conforming wall right here. You'll note that it's 3.4 feet at its max, at its greatest point, and 3.3 feet at its closest point from the property lines. This is the proposed wall that's proposed to be extended with the associated second story addition. Parking. There are 2 off-street parking spaces provided in the existing detached garage and driveway. No additional off-street parking requirements are triggered under this project scope. Correspondences. Staff has received 1 correspondence voicing concerns regarding shading and privacy. The correspondence was forwarded to the commission after the agenda packet was sent out, and the correspondence is now part of the record. It's important to note that the zoning code has no provisions regarding shading as we go into further review for this project. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA review per section 15303. And with that, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the findings and conditions of approval. And with that, staff is happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Are there any questions for staff before we turn it over to the project applicant for their presentation? Commissioner Pilch, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, thank you. You mentioned, Christopher, that there's nothing in our code about shading concerns or about shading of adjacent structures. But how about privacy? Is there anything in our code having to do with privacy?
We have a general provision on privacy. It doesn't get any sort of specifics. It's just kind of a catch-all in the findings. So it's really up to the commission to determine if there would be a privacy impact associated with the project.
So there really isn't anything formal in our code that says that we have to have certain windows can't be looked into, or just that privacy should be taken into consideration, perhaps?
Right, it's a very broad statement, and it's broad by design, obviously, because each of the house sightings within the city are pretty unique. So that's why it's written in a broad way to give the commission discretion on how you review each project.
Okay. And then I have more questions about the details of the design and construction, but I think I'll leave those for later after the applicant speaks. Thank you.
Commissioner Monin, did you have a question for staff?
Yeah, I do have a question for staff. The
Mhm.
applicant has applied for an exemption for the FAR calculation for the area below main floor.
Mhm.
There are only two sections in the set that are cut east-west, but nothing on north-south axis. I have a question about the measurement of height, how it is measured for this purpose. It looks like it has been measured on the four corners of the whole structure, whole house. Is that compliant? Is that the way it is measured, or it is measured along the perimeter of the area under question, area that is subject to the exemption?
That's a great question. So yes, this happens a few times with some of the houses here in Albany. The idea and what the code states is that measurements be taken from the exterior of the building on all four corners to the top of finished floor. And when those measurements are averaged together, if that yields a number less than 5 feet, then that area below can be exempt for purposes of calculating the floor area ratio for the property. And so that's what this applicant has done with this property based on the kind of subterranean conditions of the existing home.
I see. So it is measured at the four corners of the whole house.
Correct.
Space
Yeah.
underneath.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, are there any other questions for staff before we open it up? Okay, seeing none, why don't we turn it over to the project applicant for their presentation?
Sure. Let's see. One moment. I see, Howard, you have 5 minutes to speak, and I'll let you speak now.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Howard McNinney, 1039 Santa Fe Avenue, kind of around the corner from the project. Wait a minute, there's a delay here.
There is. Mhm.
Do you hear? How do we fix that?
We can hear you. So if you just wanted to speak on the project, I think just continue.
I'm hearing myself with about a 5-second delay. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe now I don't. Okay, let's try it. Oh, it's coming back. How do I resolve this? Can you hear me? Like,
We can hear you just fine. Mhm. I can. Mhm.
Yeah, you don't happen to have two devices connected, do you?
no, I only have one. But wait a minute. Oh, maybe it went away. Okay, I'm going to start over. I hope that I get my full allotted time. So
Go ahead and start, Howard.
I will say this. I was over last week to the house, and it was the day that the story poles were put up. And I wanted to see the effect and precisely understand the concerns of the next door neighbors. As you know, they have written a letter, Allison and Dan Marshall. And I met them both out in front of their house. And they explained to me their concerns with both sunlight and privacy. I tried to assure them that the sunlight is not the issue that they think it is. And in my opinion, the privacy issue will be improved with this project. And I'll go through and explain to you why I think that. And I'll start with the shadow issue. one of the things that I mentioned to them, well, first of all, the thing I mentioned to them is that I've got exactly the same situation at my house. I have a one-story house. The neighbor to my south built a second story years and years ago, and they did a really nice job. I had no problem with it. I thought that it had no detrimental effect on my house and enhanced my house, in my opinion. And we've always had good relations with those neighbors. We've had good relations with all our neighbors, as a matter of fact. This is Albany, after all. I also pointed out a few things like the cutout where the deck is. That could have been a solid portion of the second story. We cut it out for a few reasons, but one of the big reasons is it actually gives them more sunlight in the evening, rather than have a corner of the house that obstructs the sun. The deck, which is only be about 3.5 feet high, will allow the full sunlight to come and shine on their house. It's also true that the houses, in this case, the two houses, they're about 15 feet apart, which in Albany is not bad. In my case, my neighbor's house was 14 feet. I checked this afternoon just to be sure, and sure enough, there was sunlight coming through my dining room window. And I think that's what they're concerned about, is the dining room window, as well as their bedroom window. I didn't do a full shadow study, but in my opinion, I don't think that shadows will have any effect, will even fall on their house for half the year. I think that during the other half of the year, it will not, certainly, as they were afraid, it would not shade 100% of their natural light. It will shade some portion of their light during various parts of the day, but that's what all second story additions do in Albany. The other thing is, I went over there this afternoon, again, to see, refresh my memory on exactly what the relationship of the two houses is. And I found out something interesting. And what I found out was that the Marshalls have shades, blinds, actually, plantation type blinds mostly, on their north side, and they were all fully shut, every single one. There were no, every single window, not some, but every single window were 100% shut. The only blinds that were open were facing the street. And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, they're concerned about sunlight, but their blinds are all closed. And I'm wondering, well, why is that? I have no idea. I won't speculate, but I thought it was strange. Let me also mention that the roof height from the street is 22 feet 7 inches, as was mentioned in the staff report, above grade. We're allowed 28. Our roof slope is 3 and 12, which is quite flat. I can't get it any flatter. I mean, this is really the least intrusion that could possibly be done in a situation like this, and still keep the basic architectural character of the house. Time is short. I'll talk briefly about privacy. As I mentioned, the two houses are 15 feet apart, but there are bedrooms in both cases on both houses that are half a level up. And in those particular cases, those two rooms are only 7 feet apart. They directly face each other. And they are, I think, as I said, they're 7 feet apart. And those shades are drawn, I presume, for privacy reasons. It's possible to adjust shades so that you can see out without people being able to see in, depending upon how high they are relative to your own room. And in this case, the balcony that I think the Marshalls are concerned about is going to be higher. The new balcony will be higher than their bedroom. Even if somebody were to step out on the balcony and look straight down in that bedroom, it's possible to adjust the blinds so that you can't see in. And I'll finally say that in a lot of cases, and in my case particularly in my house, I chose to plant a tree to screen my dining room from my neighbor's, what is essentially their office or spare bedroom. There's no place to plant a tree, but if there was a place, it would be on the Marshalls' property. After all, we're only 3.5 feet away. That's an option, but it would intrude on their driveway. And I know they have vehicles that they park in the driveway, so it might not work. We've done, I think, in short, everything we can do. I've tried really hard to be a good neighbor here, to do the right thing, to minimize the impact on the neighbor. And I kind of hope that in further understanding what we've done, that the marshals might agree. I think I'm past my time. Is that right?
Yeah. I was just going to ask you, we need to wrap things up. We will certainly ask if we have any follow-up questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. McNenny. And with that, before we open it up for general public comment, are there any questions of the architect from commissioners?
No. Mhm.
Okay. I do have one quick one just for a material clarification, Mr. McNenny, if you're still available on the line. I didn't see any mention of the window materials that are being proposed for the second story, just hoping you can clarify. I did see the details that looked like probably an aluminum clad wood window, but I just wanted to get clarification on that window choice. And I think you're muted, but if you're able to unmute and let us know.
Oh, yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay. All the windows or any particular window?
On the addition, were there any, all new windows, assuming on the addition, and then if there are any replacement windows?
I generally specify clad windows, pre-finished clad. I don't think we haven't had discussion about the color.
But an aluminum clad in terms of the cladding
yes.
material? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. And then Commissioner Moment has one question, so please stay on the line. Thank you.
Are all windows being replaced, or just windows are being provided? New windows are being provided for the new addition, because the schedule mentions all windows. That includes bay window and everything on the ground level.
The audio wasn't good. I'm not sure I understood. Are you talking? Are the windows wood? Is that the question?
No, I'm asking, are all windows being replaced? The windows on the ground level, are they being replaced along with the new addition on the upper level?
Oh, are the existing part of the house?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ah, okay. I'm trying to remember. Let me check my drawings. Let me see. What have I said about that? I think some are existing to remain. No, I don't say. What generally happens is we don't always know how many have to be replaced, and sometimes it depends upon the energy analysis. And if the existing windows are single pane and we need to replace them with dual pane, that's when we sometimes make that decision. But and also those windows that are dry rotted or in need of replacement, of course, we'll do it as well. And then finally, it depends on the budget. Sometimes those decisions get made late.
Thank you.
Any final questions? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open it up for general public comment now. So if you're interested in commenting on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand now, and we'll take general public comment for 3 minutes per person. Chris, can you go ahead and open that up?
Yes, the first speaker is Allison Marshall. Allison, you have 3 minutes beginning now.
All right, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hello. So I'm Allison Marshall. I live on the south side of 1106 Neilson. I've lived here the last 17 years. I know that you were talking about that maybe that we aren't promised sunlight, but from 11 to the 11 windows that we have on that side of the house, 9 of the windows will be shaded. You can tell by the poles that are up right now that there will be shade on that whole side of the house. I do open my shades every morning and keep them open till the afternoon. And if this afternoon I had them shut, that's my own business. Thanks, Mr. McNenny, for pointing that out. But one of the reasons that we bought our house was because of the sunlight that came in. Our bedroom upstairs is all windows. This, as Mr. McNenny said, those rooms are 7 feet apart. So to have any sort of deck on the corner, it will look right into the master bedroom and look right into our backyard. Also, the owner of 1106 Neilson told me that they would not be using that deck. So I'm not quite sure why that deck will be in this plan. I've talked to another architect who looked at the plans, who said that there is a different configuration that could happen that would give us more sunlight in our dining room. And I don't know if the owners are interested in that or not. But as for, I don't know, like neighborly things, we're trying to be neighborly. We want to enjoy our house just as much as they would like to enjoy their house. I think that's it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We have one more speaker. We have Jeremiah. Jeremiah, you have 3 minutes starting now.
Hi, good evening. I'm not sure exactly what the motion is on this agenda item. I don't know if the commission here is going to motion to pass or to approve this agenda item or to table this for further, I would call it mediation. I mean, this occurs in the city far too often, right? Different addresses. I mean, these meetings are basically generally all the same. You got one neighbor wanting to do something and one neighbor opposes it. And, life is short. The ultimate goal is to keep everybody happy in some way. So I would really hope we could find a solution to this, some sort of happy medium. If someone's been doing something for so long, let them get a chance to do what they're doing, I guess, for a little bit. I mean, who knows? Life is short. And I just want people to be happy overall. I would hate for one person to be unhappy, whether on the outcome of this. And everybody deserves respect. And all these meetings, it seems like the Planning and Zoning Commission doesn't really care about the human aspect of the dispute. You guys usually always just pass it. And someone gets to do construction, which the city gets money for. So this is like an outreach for the city to get money from building permits, to install water heaters. And you guys always approve anybody wanting to do construction on their own property. If it's their own property, it's their own property and doesn't care what the neighbor thinks about it. Whether she's 86-year-old about to die and she's got this tree she's loved her whole life and the neighbor wants to cut it down. She's like the shade or everything, the birds in the tree. And then the city, I heard the meeting last year. The city didn't care what the elderly neighbor thought. And the tree was cut down. A fence was put up. A fence was put up and blocked the tree or something. I forget exactly, but I felt so bad for the elderly lady. And I just would hope that you guys take a human consideration, because we're all people. We're all stressed out about the virus. And people are just finding some way to be happy. So whether this needs to be tabled for more, I would call it mediation. The city needs to find a way to more mediate neighbor disputes if they don't agree with something on a neighbor's yard. And the easement, that's rights, that's money. If you sell a property with or without an easement costs money. It's just the easement alone. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars right now. Whether we forgive an easement or someone doesn't have an easement anymore, that means they don't have an easement to sell their property or something. We're talking about $1 million here right now. So take the.
And time's up. I see one other speaker. We have Catherine. Catherine, you have 3 minutes. Begin.
Hi, this is Greg and Kate Chiarella. We are the residents at 1106 Neilson. And I wanted just to address a couple things. First off, there was a question about the windows. I can answer that. All the windows were replaced shortly before we moved in 2014. Double or even triple paned. We would not be replacing any of those except a single west-facing window, which was not replaced. We would be upgrading that for better heat retention, etc. In terms of some of Howard's points and some of what Allison had to say, we've been talking to Allison throughout this process, and more so lately as kind of the story polls went up, and she has expressed some more concerns. We worked very closely, had a real back and forth with Howard when putting the plans together, and really worked to minimize the impact on all of our neighbors. Our height is, I believe, 22.6. My understanding is we're allowed to go up to 28 or something along those lines. So we're actually well below. And that's in part because we talked to Howard about lower ceilings in the upstairs, not doing, you know, a 10-foot ceiling. I'm not exactly, I think maybe it's 8.6, I don't know, but a lower ceiling, a gently sloped roof. As said, the cutout for what we hope would be a porch that we would use periodically. I think Allison and my wife might have spoken and there was a miscommunication. I think certainly we would use the porch, but I don't expect that we would be out there every night. In terms of the privacy concerns, the fact of the matter is right now there are 2 bedrooms across from each other and they look directly into each other's windows. But at least as far as I'm aware, almost always those shades in both our house and Allison's house are drawn because it's a bedroom and, you know, it's Albany and we're all right on top of each other. So, you know, I think, you know, if people want privacy, then they draw their shades. That's just what you have to do. We are close on that side. We're only, I think, 7 feet apart, but it's my understanding that that's because of an addition to that home north of us previously. So, and in fact, it's my understanding that when we're going to lose that bedroom as part of our design, that's going to become the stairs. We're elevating a laundry room and making some storage space. By elevating, if anything, any view into the Marshall's home will be greatly reduced. So I don't believe there's a real privacy issue here. And in terms of the other concerns, we really have tried our best to minimize any impact.
Thanks, Chris. Are there any remaining speakers? I don't see any other hands raised.
No, there are none.
Okay, seeing no other hands raised, we will go ahead and close public comment on this item and turn it back to the commission for deliberation and discussion. Commissioner Donaldson.
Sure, I'll start some on this one. Let's see, where can I start? I think it's quite a handsome design. There's a lot to like here about the overall design, the consistency with the existing building. Let's see. Yeah, I like the use of the materials. All of the items that were cited by Christopher as sort of signs of quality design, I concur with, and I think it would be quite a handsome building. Let's see, we don't have a landscape plan here, and in the recent past, we've often asked for a landscape plan when the FAR is over 0.45. I looked into that, and I really like the landscaping actually in the front yard, and I could tell that it's quite recent and quite current. So I really don't have a problem with that right now, but I will mention that to staff that with the turnover in the commission and with us no longer having a landscape architect on the commission, I'm still interested in landscape plans when the FAR is over 0.45. I think that's often a sense of quality. We really should be looking at that when we're requiring quality design. I actually made a couple of trips over to look at this site. The second one after reading the letter that came in from the neighbor, and looked over and looked and re-looked at the thing. My normal situation on this is to acknowledge that the homes in Albany are very close together, and kind of what Howard was talking about. We use blinds and we use other sort of living techniques, sometimes landscaping, to sort of modulate or mitigate the closeness of our homes. But I was taken by the large number of windows and how well lighted the back bedroom was at 1104, Allison's house, or the Marshall's house. So I wanted to take extra look at it. And a couple of thoughts. First of all, 1104 is actually higher topographically speaking than 1106. So part of the sunshade impacts that might be here, I think, are mitigated by the topography, and I'm not terribly worried about that. I think that probably the 1104 will continue to have pretty good sun exposure, in part because of the topography, if this addition is to go forward. I note that both of the new windows on 1106 in the site plan are proposed that are in the back there, right opposite the bedroom next door that has the bank of four windows in it. One of those windows is at the top of the stairs, and the other one of those windows is in the office, according to this plan. And I'm wondering if I think we could require some modifications to that. A couple of thoughts. I don't know that you need to have such a large window at the top of the stairs, or it could be opaqued in some way or blurred in some way. Actually, what we did in our house, where we had a window looking out on the blank wall next to us, is turned it into a stained glass window, and it really has improved our living room in that way. So that's one option there. I wouldn't require that, but I think there's an option there. And in the office, do you need to really have a very large window in the office? Could it not be kind of a clear story window, a good sized window up higher on the wall? It might actually improve the usability and workability of the office and still let in plenty of light. So I would be interested in, I think I could support conditions, I don't know about other commissioners, of making some modifications to those two windows anyway. And I don't know what the architect Howard would think about that, or the applicants. With respect to the deck in the back, we've been encountering this problem recently, and one of the things we've done is to, at least on the north side there, and then maybe that would be an opaque railing, a solid railing, that might reduce the line of sight of people using the deck into the windows below. It would, of course, also be opaque to the sun, so it might cause some additional shading. There's a trade-off there. But I think that some solid railings on that deck might go a long ways to sort of help reduce some of the potential privacy impacts. So those are my thoughts right now, and I want to raise those questions, and maybe we'll get some comments from the owners or the architect about the feasibility of those, and maybe other commissioners will not like them or will have other suggestions. So those are my comments at the moment. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Great, thanks, Commissioner Donaldson. Commissioner Pilch.
Nick, I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Thank you. Quickly, Commissioner Donaldson, you mentioned the windows in the office and the stairs being large. Do you mean the tall, narrow windows? That's what I'm seeing on the plans, unless I'm misreading them.
Misread the plans. I think they're. Let's see. I don't think they are tall and narrow. I think we're looking at the north elevation.
I think it's two double hung windows, it looks like. One on the stair and one in the office.
Okay, I've got my elevations mixed up. Okay, let me take another look. And then a question for staff just about what is being proposed here, so I understand. So this is the existing home is one of these strange ones where there's like one corner of the building is a split level, right? So there's a utility room down and then a bedroom above it. The house right next door to me actually is like that as well. And when they built out, they kept that split, interestingly. But in this case, it looks like what they're proposing to do is to keep the utility, to get rid of that bedroom, and then the utility room ceiling would be higher. Is that it? And so that the entire second floor is at the same level?
I believe that's true, but we could defer to the architect to clarify for sure. But that seems accurate based on the plans.
Yeah, I see some nods. Yeah, although what the owner said confused me, because the owner said that they were raising the utility room. I thought that meant he was raising the floor, but from the back elevation, it doesn't look like it. It looks like the utility room the floor is still at the same place, but the ceiling will be higher. That's what I think I see. But could I ask that question of the architect or owner?
Sure. Howard, you can speak. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Pilch, you're exactly right. The laundry room, utility room stays. The ceiling gets made higher so that the floor above now is all one level.
Okay, thank you. All right, great. Well, as long as I've got the floor, I might as well launch into a few comments too. I agree with Commissioner Donaldson that the design looks good, and the privacy concern is an interesting one, because as was pointed out, the bedrooms do point directly at each other. So there's already this existing privacy. So maybe the concern is that on the deck, on the new deck, one would be looking down into the bedroom, which allows for maybe more views or a different view. But it still is going to be a similar privacy issue. So I'm not sure that there's much more of a privacy issue being created, but Commissioner Donaldson took the wind out of my sails there, because he suggested exactly what I was going to suggest, which was the opaque railing there. Maybe at something like 4 or 5 feet, so that you really have to look over it in order to invade privacy. Otherwise, you would never see into the other house. And in terms of shading, that is mitigated by the fact that there is the driveway in between most of the two properties, and so it does look like there will be. I think that there will be some shading impacts, but I don't think that they'll be great. But again, I will say that this is not covered in our code, and the owners have a right to build out to these specifications. I'm going to have to take a look at those windows again now that I'll identify the correct elevation there. Yeah, those are my comments for now. Thanks.
Commissioner McLeod.
Yeah, I'd like to just hop in here. And yeah, I agree with most of the comments. I think it's a nicely designed project. The floor plans look very good. I'm pleased with most of the design. I do have a few issues, kind of in design sense. But maybe I should talk about privacy first. All the Albany homes are close together. There are always windows looking at each other from side to side, and it's just a fact of life here. And this applicant is allowed to build a second story, and I think that's fine, and they should be allowed to do that. In terms of the deck, most of these decks, in my experience, don't get used all that much. I think putting a solid railing or opaque surface on that one side, on the north side, would be fine as a gesture to, prevent from looking down at the neighbors. But these situations occur all the time when you have two houses adjacent to each other. Upper windows look down into lower windows, every time you have second story, two-story houses next to each other. So there are other ways of dealing with it, and that is, through window treatments, or sometimes people put little awnings over their windows, or landscape, which is something that might be difficult in this case because of the rear part is kind of close together. And I would say that, the neighbor's house to the north, part of the reason they enjoy, or they have those higher windows, is because they've already had a second story addition or an addition in the back. So it's not really fair to say, oh, you got there first, therefore you can't do it next door. That seems a little bit absurd to me. On the other hand, let's see, on the other issue of daylighting. I think the houses are pretty well separated, especially in the front. And I think having that notch out for the deck is helpful in the back. So I'm not so concerned about daylight. As far as design goes, I have some concerns about the elevations and the windows. When I'm looking at A2.2, the elevations, mostly on the, let's see, on the south elevations, the new windows on the upper floor, I would prefer to see the tall, narrow ones to the right be the same width as the other windows at the bay window. I think that would help it a bit, look a little more uniform. And then my other big issue is just the continuing of the eaves of the old roof. I don't really see that as being something that's attractive or adding to the house's design. And in fact, it just looks odd to me. If I were, if you were designing this or building this as a new house, I don't think that would be something you would ever do. It'd be added a gable eave at the side of the house. And I think especially on the north side, it would look more like one house instead of another, like one house stuck over another house, to remove that eave. And in fact, in terms of construction, those walls have to be rebuilt to go up to the second story roof anyway. So I would recommend removing the eave on the north side, the partial eave at the at the existing roof, where it's only going to be a narrow portion beyond the front sloping area. And similar in the back, I think it just creates an odd design element there. That one diagonal element, it just doesn't make sense to me to keep that either. It would make more sense to just keep that front slope going straight up to meet the new part of the house. And then that would create a little bit of a different design condition at that upper kind of truncated gable, but I would, be okay with that, I think, leaving it. So those are my comments. The windows over the stairs, or at the stair in the office, I think they're fine. You could do a treatment where the bottom half of each one is obscured or opaque. That would be one option. And I do like Commissioner Donaldson's suggestion about the office being, a bank of clear story windows a little higher. That could be fine. That would be fine for an office, I think. So the other, I think a landscape plan wouldn't hurt. And I would like to ask staff, is there a requirement for a street tree? I think there should be a street tree in the front. It looks like
yeah, we have a standard condition that requires the applicant to file a street tree application in conjunction with their building permit application.
Okay, so that will be included as a matter of course. Okay, all right, well, that's good. I don't want to give up on all of Commissioner Kent's concerns. I appreciated his point of view for the last couple of years for all the landscape items. So that's it for me for the moment.
Commissioner Moman.
I like and I appreciate the architects and owners' intention of continuation of architectural style and the effort they have taken to make it evident. I have some comments, but I would first start with privacy and shading. I think the porch or balcony at the northwest corner is a good idea to mitigate shading, but also that is kind of compromising privacy. And I think rather than just an opaque guardrail, it would be useful if there is a full height screening, and that could be further embellished with maybe some kind of trellis or something above the balcony. That would greatly help mitigate the privacy issue. And then what I observed that there is kind of a horizontal window next to the stair, which is kind of elevated high up from the floor. If that is lowered and made into a larger window than what it is now, that could help reduce one of the windows on the north side, the window that provides light to the corridor, to the stair, and that could further add to the mitigation of the privacy issue. And then there is also a large glass partition between the office and the stair. If that window near the stair, between the stair and the porch is enlarged, maybe the office would not need that large window. Either that could be eliminated or reduced in size. So these changes on the northwest corner could hugely help issues with privacy. I also concur with my fellow commissioners in regard to the shading issue. We have this very typical situation in Albany where houses are closer to each other and there are two-story houses next to each other. In this particular case, observed that the 1104 is kind of 4 feet higher than 1106, its finished floor level, and that could help in terms of getting light. And because this building, this house is on the south side, there would be ample opportunity to get direct sunlight from southeast and southwest during the morning and evening hours. In addition to that, I have some observation regarding the plan and the aesthetics. I completely agree with Commissioner McLeod regarding the windows. I think there are too many window sizes and too many window types, and that is kind of giving a cluttered look on some elevations, particularly on south side. It would be good to have some kind of coherent, unified organization of windows, particularly the window that is providing light to the upper floor bathroom, and then the upper floor bedroom, bedroom 3. Then I am not very convinced by the bathroom on the street side. I completely understand the intention of having master bedroom facing onto the backyard, but also using a prime space in the house for a bathroom doesn't look very convincing. It is not condition for approval, but it's just a suggestion. And because of that, also we are getting that horizontal window, which I think doesn't completely go with the front elevation. We have this nice, very beautiful bay window, and then we have beautiful entrance porch, and it has been further complemented by the additional bedroom on top of the entrance porch, which talk to each other nicely. And that horizontal window kind of looks misplaced to me. I also concur with Commissioner McLeod regarding the gable ends. To me too, they look odd. They don't serve any purpose. And I think construction point of view also, they could be not really helpful, because existing roof rafters would be completely removed, and then you will have to again place those pieces back in place. So, and in terms of, I think the reason for keeping those gables, I think is for breaking up the mass, but it doesn't. It looks more odd than the purpose it is serving. Maybe there could be some eyebrow windows, eyebrow awnings above the windows, something like that, to help break the bulk of the house on south side and north side. I would also, there are some minor suggestions. There is a nice window on west side for the master bedroom. I would like if the same kind of window is used on the street side also, which has like 4 lights that looks more, textured, and that could go with the bay window on the main street elevation. I think that's all.
Okay, I'll go ahead and jump in and just provide a couple additional comments. I do agree with a lot of the comments that my commissioners, fellow commissioners have said, but similarly, sort of jumping off on the sort of the privacy and shading issues. In my experience, those two issues are often at odds with one another. Oftentimes, to improve privacy, you often put up, solid walls without transparency, and sometimes there is the sort of push and pull of, where do you place massing? Again, to the point of there is sort of a principally permitted allowable volume of building that's allowed on this lot. I think the real question is, where have they chosen to site that massing? And is there a better location on the lot for them to get their program on this lot that could minimize impacts on the adjacent neighbors? And so certainly, they have the square footage to go back. So the property would be allowed to go back a bit more, I believe, than where it is currently, sited on the existing footprint. It could go taller. And so I think sort of recognizing those two allowances and the choice that they've made to keep within the existing footprint and to carve out a volume adjacent to where the neighbor's windows are and sort of the neighbor is most proximate to their property line. I do agree that although maybe the end result of where we are right now still doesn't feel like the desired outcome for the neighbors, I do think there have been some sensitive choices that have been proposed so far to get us where we are right now. The privacy issue is always one, and I know, I tend to say this at every hearing, so I'm sure the commissioners will get probably more tired of me saying it, but I know there's different people listening in the public every time. But privacy is also always a really tough issue. And I think especially in Albany, where we are so close to one another, but everyone has a different tolerance for their level of privacy. And what a privacy impact feels to me might be different than what a privacy impact feels to my neighbor. And so I think establishing regulations that put a hard and fast preclusion on one person being able to develop their property or an allowance for another based on who their neighbor happens to be today, when part of our charge in land use, and I think this is the challenge of bringing in, it's why we have regulations about what the permissible levels of development are at some level, is that we do anticipate that buildings will be outliving a lot of the people or the current day residents. And so we really have to be forecasting sort of the built environment for the future, not just the immediate term impacts. With that said, I think we should always try to be good neighbors and do whatever we can be to sort of keep the peace. We live really close to each other. And I think if there are opportunities to make, minor tweaks that don't adversely affect a property owner's program within the permissible sort of volume that they're working with, we should explore those and see if we can make win-wins whenever possible with neighbors. That's sort of my spiel on sort of the impact of privacy and shading. I would also agree that I think going deeper at a 2-story or a 2.5-story rear addition would actually have a greater likelihood of having some impact on shading. And so I think the fact that, if you look at this in site plan, there's the ability to get sort of the oblique light from both angles. The corner where the balcony is being carved out is the closest pinch point. And so with the volume being decreased there, not going any deeper and having this wider access point from the street through the driveway, I am also a little less concerned about the reality. I think story poles often, they're helpful in many regards, but I think they also often tend to make it feel bigger because you don't see where some of those voids are in the massing. They just sort of establish sort of outer bounds and limits. So that's sort of my general thought on the privacy issue. I would be supportive of a couple minor modifications to the building, going back particularly to what Commissioner Donaldson brought up at the beginning of the hearing. I think the window at the top of the stair, I think that could just be removed. I think you could put in a skylight and it would likely serve the same purpose and minimize that. I think pragmatically, no one's going to be standing at the top of the stairs, staring at your neighbor across the way. But I think if it helps sort of make the neighborly feel and have a little less sort of glass to glass interaction, I would certainly be supportive of that. That to me seems like sort of a good neighborly gesture. Similarly, making the railing solid versus open. At some level, I actually think that sometimes looks better where you don't see sort of the clutter that inherently usually ends up on the floor of a deck on the outside. So I think, I think we've got somebody who's not on mute. But similarly, you know, so I think that type of a change I would be supportive of. I'm a little less supportive of requiring that the deck railing on that side. Anne, are we able to mute the other participant here?
Jeremy?
Are we Zoom hacked?
Okay. Hey, Jeremy, you're not on mute.
Okay,
there we go.
There we go.
Got it.
Okay, I think I muted
Okay.
everyone. Okay.
Political interlude.
All right.
Great. Okay, great. Just making sure you all can still hear me now. Okay, great. Just looping back onto the issue of the deck railings. I think making it solid, I would have no problem, and even raising it a little higher than your typical 42-inch railing would be absolutely supportive of doing that. I think raising it much taller, I've got some concerns about sort of fully enclosing on 3 sides of deck. I know there may also be some impacts about sort of FAR calculations potentially when you start enclosing on multiple sides. But I do think due to this, if we were to actually look in elevation and sightline, that if you make the deck railing solid, in reality, I think the sight lines really aren't going to be terribly obtrusive looking into the neighbors. And again, going back, one of the things I always also say is, you know, I don't think your neighbors want to look into your bedroom as much as you don't want them to look into your bedroom. So I have a feeling that the neighbors will be, when using that deck, likely in their own space and not peering into neighbors. And again, I think there are other ways over the years to accommodate that if it does appear to have an issue. And I would encourage both parties to continue to work in a really neighborly way on that. I think through landscaping, you know, I've seen people use outdoor curtains in spaces like this, planting trees along property lines. There's a multitude of different ways that, again, depending on your unique sort of sensitivity to the privacy once the building is built, I think there's a variety of solutions that can be made that aren't necessarily architectural in nature. So that's sort of my shtick on those 2 issues. As it relates to the general architecture of the building, you know, I often fall into the camp of I actually like to see that this is an addition rather than a seamless from the ground up newly built building. I kind of like the fact that you can see that this was the old building and that this is sort of the 2021 era addition that's being placed on it. It's still sensitive, still sort of speaking the same language, but there's sort of an acknowledgement of history there at some level. And especially for our sort of more quality architectural buildings in Albany, which I feel very much this existing building is. I do like sort of that nod. And then lastly, in terms of additional alterations, I would be fine seeing is that on the south side elevation, I would be supportive of a bit more regularization of the window typology. I'm not even sure how exactly to describe those windows on the bay, but they're basically looks like sort of a casement with sort of a bottom transom or something along those lines. And if there's a desire to sort of convert those into more of a double hung typology that's more consistently found on the building, I would certainly be supportive of that. I think we're starting to get a little prescriptive on sort of a lot of different changes here. And so on the south elevation, I would be supportive of giving that general direction, but letting the architect, you know, the architect has been in front of us many times, and I certainly have confidence in his ability to take that direction and work with staff on making some refinements to the window pattern on the south elevation. And then I would be supportive of having a motion moving forward with that, as well as removing the stair window, allowing for a skylight, and having a solid railing along the north side of the balcony. And so that pretty much wraps my comments. And either turn it, Commissioner Pilch, you had some follow-up.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to some of the things that I heard. Actually, the diversity of windows on the, the south elevation doesn't bother me. I kind of like it, but I'm not one of the architects here. And I do appreciate the Chair Wadi's comments quite a bit. I do also like that nod to the fact that the house has been added onto, and the eaves or gables, whatever they technically called, are still there. So I'm not bothered by that at all. But then again, I'm not the architect. And one of the things that occurred to me also from the chair's comments is that and also from Commissioner Moment's comments is that instead of a higher opaque railing on the balcony, some sort of trellis, something that isn't quite opaque, a trellis, or the owners could even just have a couple of tall plants there to provide a little bit of screening. I think that could help tremendously in the feeling of getting more privacy there. Otherwise, I don't disagree with anything else I've heard. Thank you.
Commissioner Donaldson. Oh, you're on mute, Tom.
Okay. Well, yeah, we've had a lot of good discussion here, and we have some differing opinions about some of the design details. I think perhaps I'll try to frame a motion, and then people can amend it as you see fit, and we'll see where we'll go. But it'd be good to move forward anyway. So I'll do that. I'll try to move approval of planning application 20065, design review and conditional use permit for a 2-story addition at 1106 Neilson Street, with the conditions attached to the staff report accordingly, and with additional design review modifications suggested by the Planning Commission, which would include eliminating the window at the top of the stairs and putting a skylight in that area instead. Putting a solid window, a solid railing on at least the north side of the proposed deck. And I would say 42 inches is fine. That is all I'm going to put in. I'm inclined to leave the gables, although I could go either way on that. I think I'm inclined to leave the gables, and I think I'm inclined to leave the windows on the south side. But again, I could go elsewhere. I could go elsewhere on that. Those are my two big issues anyway. So with that motion, I'll let it go and let other commissioners amend it if they want, or ask for a second.
Commissioner McLeod.
Yeah, I'm generally fine with that as a motion. I would add on the south side, just making the 2 narrower windows the same width as the 2 on the bay window. I think that alone would help. And I'm fine to leave the gable eave issue to the discretion of the applicant and architect. If they wanted to look at it and change it or remove it and submit without coming back to us, I think that would be fine. Or if they want to go ahead, seems like there's enough support on the commission to leave it that, we can just let that go. So I would be fine with some modifications to the south windows, just to make all the upper floor windows the same width, at least.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Yes. Could I have asked a question of Ian about that? One of those windows, I think, is in a walk-in closet. And do you want to have a wide window there? I thought the narrow slot window was appropriate. I
think it's in the bathroom, the tall one. It's in the bathroom. If you look at the the section on A3.1, it's in the bathroom, and there's really no constraint that I can see to making it 6 or 8 inches wider.
Okay, then I would support that. I just wanted to make sure of that. Okay.
And similarly, the window on the south side of bedroom 3, that also could be widened.
Okay.
I wonder if Commissioner Donaldson would be amenable, or the other commissioners would be amenable to the choice of either a skylight or a clear story window instead of the window at the corridor at the top of the stairs, just to give some options to the owners and the architect.
I would.
No, I don't think we need a skylight there, because we have this large window between the porch and the stair. It has a very high sill. If we lower that sill, we would get ample light from that side, and that is west side. Because the other window is on the north side, it doesn't give you direct sunlight or any strong light.
Okay.
Okay, so Commissioner Donaldson, you had a motion with removing the window at the stair and replacing with a skylight. And are you open to amending that of saying that or a transom?
Yes.
Okay, so that is condition number 1. Condition number 2 is a solid railing along the north side of the balcony. And then there was a requested amendment to ask for the windows on the south side elevation to be of a consistent width with the existing lower level windows.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, great. Then why don't we say on that motion, do we have a second on,
Let's add in the idea that it would go back to staff rather than come back to us. Could I do that? So
sure, we will.
Yeah.
Great. So on the south side windows, sort of the goal of making them a consistent width, but obviously there's some detail to work out that they can work out with staff on the final execution of that. Okay, great. And Commissioner McLeod, before we final that motion?
Just to clarify, I wasn't saying they necessarily had to be the same width as the windows below, but I think that would help also. I was just saying, at least on the upper floor, make them all a consistent width.
Right, right.
But if they were consistent with the lower floor width, I think that would also look better, but I don't necessarily need to see that as a requirement.
What if I were to just recommend that the conditions say work with staff on regularizing the window pattern on the south elevation, just to provide a smidge of flexibility depending on logistics? Okay, great. Good. So with those 3 conditions, removing the window of the stair, replaced with a skylight or a transom, making the balcony railing solid along the north side, and continuing to work with staff on regularizing the south side window pattern. We have a motion, and now do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Pilch. Then on that motion, Commissioner McLeod.
Yes.
Commissioner Momin.
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch.
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that motion passes 5-0. And because there are story polls up, please leave those story polls up for the 14 days through the appeal period that item has been approved. Moving on then, item 7 on our agenda is next, which is new business, of which we have none. Next up, item 8 on our agenda, announcements, communication, discussions. We have 2 items. First up, item 8-1, that is the Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair reorganization.
Yeah, this is the time of year when we reorganize those roles with the commission. Chair Waddy has been she's been our chair for the last 2 years. And so this is really your opportunity to decide if you want to nominate somebody new, or if Commissioner Waddy wants to stay in that role. It's really up to the pleasure of the commission who they want to see chair it for the next year.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Yeah, I'll comment. We have had tradition of passing the chair around, and I like that tradition. I think it's a good one, and I'm sure other members of the commission could serve very well in the chair. That being said, I think Elizabeth has done a fantastic job, and I also think that this might not be the right time to switch her out, because she mastered the Zoom And
Oh, sure.
many of us take over the Zoom controls, have a learning curve. And so I would say that I would nominate Elizabeth to continue as the chair.
That was going to be my question, whether or not are we going to do the Robert's Rule process here? It sounds like we're taking nominations at this point.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll nominate, and I would agree that what I've seen of the chair of Chair Waddy, I'm impressed with, and I would have no issue with her continuing. I also think that passing the chair around would be great, and I would nominate Commissioner McLeod for chair.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. What happens next?
Commissioner Monin.
Yeah, I totally agree with Commissioner Pilch, and I agree with Commissioner Donaldson's suggestion. I have seen Chair Waddy conducting these meetings very effectively on videos. I second their suggestion.
Okay.
Commissioner McLeod.
Yeah, I agree. Chair Waddy's done a fantastic job. I've been impressed for the entire time. Having said that, I'd be happy to serve as chair. I would also be equally happy if Elizabeth continued. I'm of sort of two minds here. I thought there was a rule that you couldn't be chair for more than 2 years. Is that correct? And
I don't think we have anything formalized that prevents that. And we have had, obviously, we've had chairs, follow through. When Commissioner Geeson Fields was on the commission, he served for 2 consecutive years. So there's nothing that precludes that.
Well, I mean, I'll just chime in. I mean, I'm certainly happy to continue serving as chair, particularly if it's helpful in COVID while we're remote, and more than happy to sort of pass the baton as soon as we're back to normal, if there are the votes. So I appreciate the kind words, but I'm also happy to pass the torch. So if there are votes to keep it going for this year, great. Otherwise, we can change things up. Yeah, Commissioner McLeod.
I'm perfectly happy to have you continue doing it. Like I said, I've been very impressed. You run the meetings very well and explain things very well, and I think you. So I would be fine to support Chair Waddy for another year.
Oh, so are you declining the nomination then?
Yes, I am. I thank you, Nick, for the vote of confidence, but
that's perfectly your right.
So there you have it.
Well, so on that point, Anne, do we need to take a vote? Do we,
Yeah,
what is the, typically
so
to make a motion?
Yeah, Doug has nominated you, so someone will need to second that, and then all in favor will have to take a vote.
By Robert's rules, technically nominations don't need seconds. We could just vote.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I'll call the vote on that. Then Commissioner McLeod.
Yes.
Commissioner Momin.
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch.
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll vote yes, and thank you again for your continued support in me as chair. So thank you. Well, with that, we need to also nominate a vice chair, if that is the case. Commissioner McLeod, you had hand raised?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Pilch. He's had a lot of experience on the commission and in city government. I think he would be a great vice chair. Been involved in one way or the other for what, about 10 years now, Nick, in terms of council and
commissions and yeah, including all that, 13 years.
Yeah.
And for historical context, Commissioner Pilch was the vice chair in 2014, so he's a bit of a ringer in this.
Okay.
Well, I'll chime in. Would be very supportive of having you as vice chair as well, Commissioner Pilch. So I would be looking forward to working with you in that capacity.
As would I.
Thank you.
All right. Well, why don't we cut to the chase? Well, why don't we call the vote then? So on that nomination of Commissioner Pilch as vice chair, Commissioner McLeod,
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson,
Yes.
Commissioner Moman,
Yes.
Commissioner Pilch,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So that vice chair nomination is approved 5-0 as well. Great. Well,
Thank you.
again, congrats. Thank you. With that, we will move on to our next agendized item, which is item 8-2, the 2023 to 2031 housing element. Staff, I assume you have a presentation or a quick discussion?
I don't actually have a presentation.
Okay.
It was more just an announcement for the commission's benefit. So we got approval from the City Council in December. We have Barry Miller under contract. He will do our update. He did our our 2007, 2014, and then our 2015, 2023 housing element. So he's back for the third cycle with us. We're excited to have him. Just a kind of two things related to this. For your agenda this evening, we took the materials from the July 22nd agenda and republished them for the benefit of our two new commissioners, just so you have that. This is information that really gives you the big snapshot of what is a housing element. Here's what we can expect in this most recent forthcoming update process. And it's really just more to give you context and also to put it out there as a refresher. We do expect that we will get our efforts underway here most likely in February. So you'll start to see Barry again. And we will certainly keep you posted on that. And that will be about a 2-year process working with him to successfully complete our housing element.
Just a quick question for you, Ann, on that. Is he also going to be, I assume we're needing an EIR on the housing element, or is it a lower level environmental review that we do here?
So that's an interesting question. It's to be determined.
Okay.
The previous cycles, we did mitigated negative declarations. One of the things that Jeff and I have heard through the ABAG meetings is that the CEQA is expected to be more robust this time around. So it is quite possible that we will be doing something more than that. We do have an on-call contract with Rincon Consultants. They do a lot of CEQA work. They're based in Oakland. So once we get to that point in the process, they will be taking the lead on the CEQA.
Got it. Okay, great. And then Commissioner Moman, did you have a hand up?
Yeah. So you mentioned that the document that you have shared is from July. So are we expecting the updated set of documents soon?
Not anytime soon. This was more just for context. When we do have Barry back to initiate the process, you'll be getting new staff report and materials. He'll also provide you with an audit of what we've done with the current housing element, and he'll make recommendations for the next cycle as far as policies that we'll need to include.
Okay.
I would expect that there might be some small changes, at least since then, because as part of my work in my just recently past job as mayor, they were still doing a lot of work at ABAG on the various policies. I'm not thinking of the right word, but the various ways they were going to calculate, and there were some last minute suggestions for changes. So I think we might see some changes in whatever comes back to us later on. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think it's a correct assessment. I think it's reasonable to expect that we will see quite a fair amount of changes from the last cycle to the current cycle.
Also, there are, sorry, go ahead, Donaldson.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. Also, there are, I quickly skimmed through the report that you have sent, and there are two options for arena. One option shows like how required housing units more than 1,000, and the other option shows like something about 350 or something. So
yeah, I think we're expecting with this cycle, we expected that our number would triple, and it most likely it's going to be a little over 1,100 units that we'll have to account for in this next housing element cycle.
Wow.
So it's a significant increase. And I think that, with that increase and ABAG conveying their expectations on CEQA, it's going to be a much different housing element than what we've done in the past.
It's interesting because with the CEQA part, I know that there's been, the legislation, the state government has been trying to remove barriers to getting housing built. So I would hope that they wouldn't, shoot themselves in the foot by making it more difficult to pass a robust housing element or a housing element that provided for lots of housing. So we'll see. I hadn't heard what you said, and before, but hopefully the tide is continuing on towards allowing communities to build the housing that, or making it easier and easier for communities to build the housing that needs to be built.
Well, if the numbers are as high as 1,100 or 1,200, as shown in the tables that were presented to us, the high numbers anyway for Albany, it's hard to imagine how you could possibly get 1,100 units under our existing general plan. And so we're talking about general plan amendments or rezonings, and those are likely to be not exempt from CEQA. I mean, they'll have significant impacts and would have to be evaluated, I would think. So, yeah. So I mean, the numbers are to me, they're pretty shockingly high, given our existing general plan and I also I looked at the numbers for various cities around us as well, and they're really quite remarkable, remarkably high. And I don't know how this is all going to play out. I don't know. And do you know anything more about when ABAG is going to be, sort of finalizing the numbers or deciding on the approach? There's like 6 different options that were in this memo for how to calculate the RHNA. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're expecting to get our number within the next month or so.
Really?
And then once we have that, that's when we'll really start.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's coming back to me now. I think they, sorry, Doug. I think they did choose one of the options. It might have been option 3, but that's a wild guess. I think that was chosen, but there was what I was referring to earlier. There was a last minute push to choose a different option. I don't think that succeeded, but I do think that the calculations are finalized now. If not, but they might not be communicated out to all the jurisdictions yet.
Yeah.
As long as I've got the floor, I'll add that I don't know if everyone is familiar with the fact that we have this new UC is proposing new housing. And so that'll be a significant addition to housing units, and I don't know how that will play into our calculations, whether that sort of housing is included or not. I think it would be, but I'm not sure.
I bet it would be. Do you know how many units that is, Nick? Mm-hmm.
I don't, but I do know that they were, at least in preliminary discussions I had with them or preliminary presentations, they wanted to build quite a few units, or, they wanted to get as dense development as possible. So it'll be a significant number.
With affordable units?
It would be similar to the Village, where it would provide an opportunity for student housing. I think right now with the Village, because the emphasis is on family housing, this would be a little bit different. It would be solely student housing, so studio units, 1 bedrooms, that sort of thing.
And just really quick, not to interrupt here, but we should make sure we open it up for public comment at some point here. But Commissioner McLeod, if you want to just chime in, I saw you had your hand raised, and then after your comment, we'll go ahead and open up for public comment.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere in the range of 700 to 800. It was either units or bedrooms for the UC proposal. So that's quite significant.
It is.
And then I think, yeah, if the number is really high for our housing element, then, a lot of the comments I've been seeing, or some of the comments I've been seeing in the open house or the forum for the specific plan on San Pablo also are saying, well, why just San Pablo? Why not other areas? So I think we probably need to look at Solano corridor, maybe Brighton. So, you know, I think that's a much bigger thing to do coming up than even just the specific plan, which is going to be really helpful. But yeah.
Well, I thought it was unfair when I saw that our highest number on that table was 1,225 units, I think, and El Cerrito, which is twice our size, only their highest number was 1,498. So I thought that was unfair to Albany. It's very interesting to look at the other cities too. Emeryville was over 4,000 units. And how are they going to do that? Berkeley, 12,700 is the high number for Berkeley. How are they going to do that? These are big numbers with huge land use implications for the whole region, for all of us. I don't know.
Commissioner McLeod?
Well, the other interesting thing is part of this is the requirement for low and very low income housing, you know, as big percentages, 15 or more.
Oh, higher.
For each, higher. So how we can actually do that is really an enigma. I mean, I don't know, as if we're doing it just through our, you know, private housing development, I don't see how we get those percentages at all. The only ray of hope I've seen lately is that the state budget is actually in fairly good shape, and there's going to be a much bigger budget devoted to housing. So that may help us. So we'll have to keep our eye on that as the state budget goes forward.
All right, not to cut off our
conversation.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure, go ahead. I was going to say, we just need to make sure we remember to open it up for public comment here. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Commissioner Momin, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I too had observations about the affordable, part of the arena. Looks like it is about 40%, and I was kind of correlating that with our inclusionary housing requirement, for larger projects, which is 15%. So there is a big mismatch between the two, and so we'll have to think about how we can increase the production of affordable housing, and we can use San Pablo Avenue specific plan for that purpose. And I think we can also link that with density bonus issues that we are also looking at there, because that could be another way of adding more affordable housing.
That's great. All right, why don't we pause on our commentary, and Chris, why don't you go ahead and open it up for public comment? So if there's anyone who'd like to comment on this announcement item about the housing element that will be forthcoming, now is your opportunity to speak. So go ahead, Chris, if you want to let the first speaker chime in.
Sure, thank you. The first speaker we have up is Eric Bieber. You have 3 minutes to speak starting now.
Thanks very much for the chance to talk. I'm an Albany resident. I'm also a professor at UC Berkeley who studies and teaches land use law. You well know the importance of the housing element and how it's going to set policy and law for the next 8 years, and is crucial for compliance with state law and advancing our obligations to provide housing. There's been a lot of significant changes to state housing element law lately, all of which increase the powers of local governments to provide for housing and the obligation to do so. One key component of those obligations, failure to enact a compliant housing element, means that affordable housing projects get by right approval that bypass local zoning. I have some suggestions and recommendations about how we could produce an adequate housing element that I think will comply with state law. One is the housing element should be written to make clear that it supersedes the local zoning ordinance in the city, specifying that key components of the element are fundamental, mandatory, and clear. We should also provide in the housing element that any future downzoning by the city must be offset by concomitant upzoning in the city. We should commit to reviewing how the discretionary review processes in the city's zoning ordinance are affecting housing production, and provide for repealing them unless they are revised. We should commit to a mid-cycle review of the city's progress in meeting its housing goals, and commit to reviewing and revising the city's zoning ordinance if those goals are not met. We should be compiling data on the timeframes for approvals of projects in the city over the past housing cycle. including whether the city's approval processes comply with the Permit Streamlining Act and other relevant state laws. If this data is not available, we should acknowledge that this lack of data is a constraint on development that should be addressed in the housing element. In developing the site inventory, we should set a reasonable probability that any particular site will be developed. That reasonable probability should be based on historic development patterns in the city, and that reasonable probability should be used to determine the amount of site inventory capacity that we need to provide for in the housing element. Additionally, I'd recommend assessing the extent to which design review in the city is hampering the production of housing and reviewing the allowable FAR in all zoning districts in the city and the construction of at least duplexes in all parts of the city. Finally, I'd encourage affirmative outreach to residents of the city so that participation in hearings is not limited only to individuals who have the interest and capacity to attend a particular meeting. I'm happy to follow up about any of these points with members of the commission if they're interested. Thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Great. Next speaker we have up is Jeremiah. Jeremiah, you have 3 minutes starting now.
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm grateful for my 3 minutes for public comment. Hey, everybody. I just would like to say that I did attend the 2x2x2 meeting. I think I said it right. Yeah, I was just wondering if this committee had any subcommittees that actually attended that, like when you choose what subcommittees each commission member is going to be on. Is there anybody from this meeting that will attend? Because I know the school board, the social and economic justice, they attend. I was just wondering who on this commission meeting attended the 2x2x2 meeting on Monday. I believe it was Tuesday. Oh, Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. That's right. I was just wondering if anybody attended that on this commission. The numbers were there. Oh, by the way, it is 800. You're right. It's 800. They want to build 800 units at UC. That's a problem. That's in our open space. So now we're going to have less open space acres. So we got to change that. So now we're going to have less open space. So that probably needs to go to the, if we're talking about the housing element in UC Berkeley is actually going to go to the regents, and UC Berkeley doesn't think they need Albany's permission, by the way. This is going to go right back to the UC regents, and they're going to do whatever they want. They could care less what Albany has to say. They could care what probably this commission, city council, they could care less really what Albany thinks. And that's sad. So this decision, the housing element, UC Berkeley right there behind Sprouts, at our open space, our city's open space, is going to be converted, yeah, to studios. They're going to be 4-unit buildings, 4-unit rooms with 4 bedrooms. And there's going to be a bunch of grad students. It's called grad student housing. So I'm right here on Adams and Solano. So it's going to be grad student housing. That's what it is. So that's our open space. We're going to lose that, and they don't really care because it's going to go back to the regents. So I really hope Albany actually gets to say what goes on within our city limits. You know, they don't. If they're going to do this, we're going to need a lot more school zones. We're going to need a lot more crossing guards down there when school starts. Ocean View's done. Well, if the UC Berkeley wants to put housing, then they're going to need to start paying for their 3 crossing guards again, right? So that all is included in this housing element. Because once you build housing, you got to figure everything else out. Restriping the crosswalks. Who does Sprouts? There's no, Sprouts intersections are terrible on the street. There's no stop sign, there's nothing. UC Berkeley is terrible with our city streets. There's no signage.
And time's up. I see no other speakers.
Okay, seeing no other public commentary, we will at least close public comment on item 8-2. Commissioner Donaldson, you raised your hand.
Yeah, if Mr. Bieber is still listening or around, I liked your comments. They were very succinct and clear. And could you pass those on to staff, our staff, Ann Hirsch, and then Ann could distribute your list of housing element requirements to all of us. I think it might be a good checklist that you provided. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the things that I was going to say is that, yeah, if you could send those to us in writing, I also appreciated the comments and would love to follow up. I would also say with regards to Jeremiah's comment, he's correct in that the UC where they're planning to build does not need Albany's approval. But I do not think it's correct that UC does not care what Albany thinks. In all my experience, UC does care what Albany thinks and does confer with the city and with its residents before embarking on projects and finalizing projects like this. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Any final thoughts from the commission before we wrap? Okay, seeing none, then we'll go ahead and close item 8-2, moves us on to item 9 on the agenda, which is next meeting in 2 weeks, so January 27th, same time, same Zoom channel. And so with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Thank you. Nice
Thank
having
you. Good night.
new members aboard.
Yes, thank you on your first
thank you
hearing.
for